everyone, welcome back. My name is Eileen Chevalier and I created the typewriter alphabet. This is the flashcard set and we are studying botany. Today we are going to look at photosynthesis. Animals eat plants, but what do plants eat? In other words, how do plants get energy? The sun. In this lesson, we'll learn about photosynthesis, the process of capturing energy from the sun and storing it in glucose molecules. So for today, we're going to use 3 different resources. So you've got your flashcards, and specifically, we're going to look at the cue card. We'll also use the Ultimate Visual Dictionary, which is a DK book, and the DK Smithsonian Flora book. So before we get into those, I will read a definition for you. So grab out your journal and I'll read it to you as you write it. Photosynthesis, process of converting energy from the sun into food. So glucose, which is a type of sugar, has 3 types of atoms. So this is like a chemistry lesson first off, okay? Because photosynthesis, it's energy, it turns into food. How does this happen? It happens via chemistry, right? So we're going to think about atoms. If you remember back to the Cells 1 lesson, we talked about atoms, and here we are talking about atoms again. So 3 types of atoms. There's only 3, so hopefully we can keep them in track. Carbons. So there are 6 carbon atoms. There are also 6 oxygen, and there are 12 hydrogens, okay? So we've got 3 different types, 6 carbon, 6 oxygen, 12 hydrogen. You can write it like this. Actually, they put the hydrogen in the center. So it's like alphabetical order. So C6, H12, O6. So I'll actually show you right here on the guide, just in case you don't have this printed out. So you can see, hopefully I'm getting it in there for you, what it says. All right, look at the photosynthesis diagram in the visual dictionary. This is such a fantastic page. You can write the process of photosynthesis like a math problem because chemistry. So energy, sunlight, plus carbon dioxide, plus water, H2O, equals glucose, which is what we just said, C6H12O6, plus oxygen, O2, plus water, H2O. So I'm going to show you in the Ultimate Visual Dictionary their diagram. It's on page 138. So 138 and 139, they're talking about photosynthesis. We've looked at this a little bit before, but this diagram is phenomenal. I love it. It's great if you have this book, which hopefully you do. This is an excellent page for you to kind of see what's going on. All right, so they show you in like drawings of these 3D molecules blown up really huge, so you can kind of see how they're interacting with each other. So you can see the inputs and the outputs in this chemical reaction, okay? And it's happening because there are all these things inside. Over here on this side, got the chloroplast. So inside the chloroplast, all these things are happening. Many, many, many things are happening actually to turn the sunlight into food. And it's just like multi-stage process. So we're not going to get into all of that, but I just want you to understand some of the basics of what's going on. All right, you need 6 carbon dioxide molecules and 12 water molecules, which is H2O, to make 1 glucose because of how the energy is captured. Where does the energy that went into the reaction go? Right? So we said that there was energy on this side of the equation, right? So energy is over here. Where is the energy over on the other side? Because it's like math, right? You know that if there's an equal sign, everything on one side of the equation has to equal everything on the other side of the equation. So what happened to the energy? The opposite of creating energy, or capturing it, I should say, is respiration. The equation for respiration is the photosynthesis equation, boop, in reverse. Okay? So basically what you have in the glucose molecule, you have captured the energy. So the energy that started out is in the glucose molecule on the other side. So the way you get it out is to just do the opposite of what you did to begin with. So you have your, everything that was on the, sorry, let me see if I can get it right. There was the left side of the equation. We added everything up, and then it equaled all these things on the right-hand side of the equation. So we're going to flip them. So you take all the results, which included that glucose. So you start with the glucose, and then you just do the opposite reaction, and then you have all the stuff that you started with. So how do human cells get energy to stay alive, right? And we plants, they've got the glucose. We need the glucose. Then we break it down, do the opposite of that reaction, and voila, we have energy. So if we reverse that reaction, what is it that we are breathing out? Guys, this is like, as an adult, I finally understood what we're breathing out. I was always taught like plants take in oxygen and plants take in carbon dioxide and then they give us oxygen. And then we take in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. And I just thought that was it, right? I just thought, plants, oxygen, or carbon dioxide in, oxygen out. Me, oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. So we'll just like sit here and reciprocate to one another, right? Okay, so that is like super simplified. That is not all that's going on. There is a lot going on, right? Because I need sugars. And when I do that, I'm going to take in some oxygen. I'm going to also take in water because I need water and oxygen because those are the two things that were the products over here in the original equation. And I'm going to need that sugar. And then my body's going to go through this metabolic process. And what's going to come out is energy, which is why I'm alive and breathing, and carbon dioxide, which I'm going to breathe out, and water, right? But that's not the only thing that's happening in my body, right? So I'm not using every single oxygen molecule when I breathe in. I only take in some of the oxygen molecules. So when I breathe out, I'm breathing out a ton of oxygen. There's still lots of oxygen that I didn't use, that my body didn't take. So I'm still breathing out lots of oxygen. I'm also breathing out some carbon dioxide. Mostly I'm breathing in nitrogen and I'm breathing out nitrogen, and it's just not, I'm not doing anything with it. It's coming in and it's going out. Mostly our breath is nitrogen because mostly the air is nitrogen, right? So this is, if you haven't learned this, it's super, like I was so excited to learn this. So I'm just going to tell you now so that you can learn it before I did, because I was quite up in the years when I learned this for the first time, and it was so exciting because I was like, oh, this is how we can still breathe when we're in a room with other people. Like we aren't just like using up all the oxygen immediately. You're only using part of the oxygen that you're breathing in. So it will take a long time. You can all relax. You're still going to breathe out oxygen. How do plants get energy? So we've talked about how we use the energy that plants have given us, and we are taking in some oxygen and we're using that oxygen and we're creating this process, metabolic process, and then we're breathing out some carbon dioxide from that reaction. But that's because we need energy from the plants. But what about the plants? Is the only thing that the plant is doing taking in sunlight, making energy, and then we eat all of that energy? All that energy is available to us? How is the plant growing? How is the plant making flowers? Does it need energy for those things? Just like we need energy to grow, we need energy to produce anything, right? Like, does the plant also need energy? So we'll talk about this more in the transportation of fluids lesson. How is this happening? Or do we get all of the energy from the plants, or do the plants also just use their own energy? So if they need energy to grow and to make flowers and to make seeds, then are they also going through that same respiration process that we go through when we take in oxygen and when we breathe out carbon dioxide? Can plants also do that? I always thought that, I was like super simplified when I was in elementary school learning these things. And I was like, oh yeah, plants take in carbon dioxide and they release oxygen. I just thought that's all they did. But that is not all they do, because they too need to use the energy that they made. They aren't just making it for animals, right? They are making it for themselves. And so they go through that same metabolic process where they reverse the process of photosynthesis so that they can use energy as well. So, do plants ever breathe out carbon dioxide? Absolutely, right? Because otherwise they would never grow. They would never develop. They would never be able to set flowers or make seeds. Like, they would never be able to make nectar. They would never be able to do any of the things that they do unless they were doing the same process that we're doing in respiration. So photosynthesis goes this way, respiration, you just flip it on its head and it does the same thing. So plants can release oxygen, and they will also release carbon dioxide when they're respirating. Okay? All right. Next up, photosynthesis involves a lot of gases. Carbon dioxide and oxygen are both gases, right? So we're breathing in these things. They're just floating around in the air. When they're in that state, they're called gases, flowing in and out of leaves. So if you think about that, like our bodies, we're breathing in, right? Breathing in, and then we're breathing out, and we do this through our mouths. And so we all kind of like understand how that works. But when you look at this plant here, what is happening? Like, how is it breathing in and out? These are just look like flat leaves, right? Where is that breathing in and out happening? How do gas molecules get into leaves? It has no mouth to breathe them in. So how are they getting in there? And then how are they getting out? Like, it's supposed to be giving us oxygen, but where is that gas coming from on this flat leaf? So look at the diagram in Visual Dictionary. What would happen if the leaves were coated in oil? Classic science experiment, and why? You can also look at page 129 in Flora. So I'll show you both of those. So I'm going to show you this one again. And then I'm going to show you over here on this side. Sorry, it's hard for me to see what you're seeing. All right, this is the cross section through the leaf. And so if you saw down here at the bottom is the stomata, and the stomata is like the mouth, right? The stomata is where the gases go in and the gases come out. And that is how leaves breathe in and out, right? So I'm going to show you in here as well. So we're looking at transpiration is what this diagram is showing. But as you can see, it shows the same thing. Right there on the bottom is the stomata. And that chamber, that empty chamber right above it for the gases. Same thing. So that's talking about the water cycle and transpiration. And then this is another photosynthesis diagram in here. It's just another photosynthesis one. I really prefer the one in the Ultimate Visual Dictionary just because there's so much going on. I think it gives you lots of really great information at the same time. So it's breathing through the stomata, right? So what would happen if there were oil on the plant, or if there were something like oil that was coating the plant? If the plant can't function the way that it is supposed to be functioning with the gas exchange and the sunlight coming in, then what's going to happen to those leaves, right? So in your journal, a couple of activities. Most photosynthesis takes place in leaves, right? We all know that. Leaves are green, they photosynthesize. But some plants photosynthesize in stems and even roots. What kind of plants do you think they could be? So try to think for a second and ask yourself, like we've looked at some plants in our botany lessons that do this. You might, when we talked about the leaves and more leaves, like think about plants that don't have leaves. So if a plant doesn't have any leaves, what is going to have to photosynthesize? And then we talked about orchids, and they have plant parts that aren't just leaves that are photosynthesizing. Now, try to think of those, and then I'll show you a few pictures. What if a plant didn't have any leaves? Where would roots have to be to photosynthesize? So if their roots are like super deep in the ground, are they going to be doing any photosynthesis? No. But do roots have to be in the ground? No, they do not. There are a lot of things I love about this book, but this book says that roots are the underground parts of plants. Absolutely not true. In general, the roots are underground, but there are lots of plant parts. As we have learned, basal plate stems, which are bulbs, and the scale leaves, those are all underground, and those are not roots. And then we have roots that aren't underground, right? So there are roots that are just hanging in the air. So you can't always base what part of the plant it is on based on where it is. And then you have everything that's in the water, like all the water plants. They're not in the ground. They've got all these stems in the water, right? So anyway, there are lots of plant parts in different areas. So if you want to have a root that's photosynthesizing, where would that root need to be? In the air, maybe in the water? All right, so read about and document 2 special plants in Flora. So I alluded to. So here's a picture of some aerial roots. So these roots are hanging out in the air. And as you can see, what color are these roots? Are they just kind of brown or white? Some roots are yellow. These roots are green. Green makes us think, maybe there's some photosynthesis going on in there. Aerial roots. Living high in the canopy, perched on the branches of trees, epiphytic plants need roots that hold them firmly in place. These aerial roots emerge along the stems and cling to any nearby surface. Unlike the roots of ground-dwelling terrestrial plants, which make direct contact with the soil, aerial roots can only absorb water from fog, mist, and rain. So they're not sitting underground where there's generally always some water available, so that they have to live somewhere where there's enough moisture in the air that they can grab that moisture in while it's there. They are specially adapted to draw water from these sources. In some cases, aerial roots become green and can manufacture food via photosynthesis. So, super cool. Orchids do this. I love it. I love looking at the roots of my orchid and seeing them green and knowing that they're up high because they want to capture all that sunlight and photosynthesize, right? Then the other types of plants, we've talked about them a little bit. So this is another example. I've talked about Christmas cactus because my C in the alphabet is Christmas cactus. These are leafless stems. So leaves produce food for plants, but moisture quickly evaporates through their large surface area. In the dry, harsh climate of the desert, some plants have adapted by not growing leaves. Instead, their green succulent stems take on the job of photosynthesis. By taking in carbon dioxide at night and storing it in their stems, these plants can photosynthesize with pores closed during the hot sunlight hours. So that's also a really fascinating thing that they're doing, right? So like the stomata are their pores that they're needing to have the gas exchange. Stems at work. Many succulents show the same adaptation to their environment as cacti. They do not have spines, but their very reduced leaves mean that they rely on their succulent stems for photosynthesis and grow the carbohydrates that all plants need to. They produce the carbohydrates that all plants need to grow. So technically in this drawing, these tiny little, they almost look like thorns, but they're actually leaves. So those tiny little leaves just aren't enough. They wouldn't manufacture enough glucose for the plant, right? So it needs to do that throughout the stem. So that's why these stems are also green. So the stems and the leaves are photosynthesizing. So those are just 2 really interesting plants that are photosynthesizing. One's photosynthesizing in the roots and one is photosynthesizing in the stems. So does not just take place in the leaves. Second is to draw a diagram showing how photosynthesis works, right? You can do the equation, you can draw the picture, you can use pictures, words, lines, and numbers. See if you can use your diagram to explain photosynthesis to a friend, or your parent, or your grandparent, or your neighbor, or the postman or anyone who will listen to you. So the best way to learn something and like get it into your brain is to teach it to someone else. So see if you can draw it and then explain it to someone else. Have them, the best people to do this with are people who are going to ask you questions that you have to think about, and it's hard. So find somebody who will challenge you and make you explain it to them. Yeah, that's the best way. All right, have fun doing that, and I will see you in the next lesson. Thanks, guys. Bye.